Now let's move into chapter 12, which is about scheduling. Compared to earlier topic, scheduling is conceptually easier to understand, but the technical detail can become quite complex. In this chapter, we focus on the big picture and give you a sense of how scheduling works without going into those most difficult parts. Now, think about where we are in the overall module number 4. We already have the forecast. We have made facility decisions, and we have completed aggregate planning. So at the big picture level, everything is aligned. Now we move to the most detailed level, which is day-to-day decision making. That is what scheduling is about. To understand this, consider the example of Cleveland Clinic. It is one of the largest and most advanced hospitals in the United States, handling 8.6 million patient visits per year, 222,000 surgeries every year, which means, think about it, it's quite amazing, about more than 700 surgeries per day. The challenge is how to allocate resources to meet all of these service needs. The resources involved include operating room, specialized medical equipment, and most importantly, highly skilled staff such as surgeons, nurses, and other medical professionals. These resources are limited and must be carefully scheduled. At the same time, demand is highly variable. Each patient visit and each surgery is different, right? That's not surprising. Each visit and each surgery require a unique sequence of activities and resources. This makes the problem similar to a job shop environment, where each job follows its own path. To manage this complexity, organizations use different scheduling approaches. For example, a block scheduling strategy assigns specific time blocks to certain surgeons or specialties. This makes it easier to prepare operating rooms, coordinate staff, and organize equipment. In other cases, such as emergency rooms or routine lab work, a first-come, first-served rule may be used because it is simple and perceived as fair. Formally, scheduling is a short-term decision. Okay, it's a short-term decision about allocating resources to tasks, subject to the constraints set by the earlier capacity planning decisions. The goal is to balance several objectives that often conflict with each other. We want high efficiency, meaning good utilization of resources. We also want good customer service, such as short waiting times. In manufacturing settings, we may also want to keep inventory low. These competing goals make scheduling both important and challenging. Now let's introduce some basic concepts related to batch scheduling. In this context, batch scheduling means we are given a fixed set of jobs and a set of resources, and our task is to assign those jobs to the resources. The key idea is that the set of the jobs need to be done, okay? The set of the jobs is fixed. We are not constantly adding new works or reshuffling the schedule every time something changes. That could be a different situation, right? Sometimes in some business environment, you need to do that. Those scenarios are often referred to as a more dynamic or online schedule, but that's even more complex. But therefore, for this module, we just talk about a simple situation, okay, which is batch scheduling. So therefore, we focus on planning for a known group of jobs. They are all there on the table. No change, okay? Let's clarify some terminology. A job can mean different things depending on the context. In manufacturing, it may refer to a part or a product. In the hospital, it may be a patient. In a service or logistics setting, it could be order or a request. Regardless of the context, we simply call all of those jobs. Similarly, resources can take many forms. They may be people, such as surgeons. They may be space, such as conference rooms. They may be equipment, such as different kinds of machines. In scheduling terminology, we refer to all of this resource as workstations. Okay, so now we use terminology simplified. Okay, one important observation in batch scheduling is that jobs spend most of their time waiting rather than being processed. For example, a job may require only a few minutes of actual processing time across multiple steps, but it may spend much longer waiting in line for those resources. After completing one step, it often has to wait again for the next required workstation. Because many jobs are competing for limited resources at the same time, waiting becomes the dominant part of the total time. In fact, it is quite common that around 95% of the total time a job spends in the system is waiting, while only a small portion is actual processing time. This is a key characteristic of such system. The main challenge comes from the combination of factors. There are many jobs, each with its own specific routing and processing requirements. Even for the same step, one job may require 3 hours, another job may require 5 hours, right? Even for the same type of resource. Each job must follow a particular sequence, and steps cannot be skipped or rearranged. At the same time, multiple jobs are competing for the same limited resources. This competition creates queues and waiting, which makes scheduling complex. So the core issue is batch scheduling is how to manage this competition for shared resources and reduce waiting, while still respecting the required processing sequences of each job. Okay, so again, in a bigger picture, keep in mind we are talking about job shop or batch shop kind of operations. Just imagine if you are producing cars in the auto factory, the scheduling is less challenging because you are producing the same thing, even though high volume, okay? So in that case, there is not much waiting. The whole production line is moving on the conveyor. It's even synchronized, okay? Very fast paced and synchronized. But think about earlier chapter, right? When we talk about product process matrix, those situations belong to either repetitive process or continuous process, which is not the focus of scheduling. Okay, when we are talking about the challenges faced here, we are talking about batch scheduling or scheduling for job shop type of environment. Now let's look at numerical example to understand in a very basic format how scheduling is done. First, we introduce a concept called the Gantt chart. Okay, so Gantt, this is Gantt chart. Okay, Gantt is obviously a person's name, and this chart has many uses. In this chapter, we use it to represent scheduling. Okay, you can see 3 lines here, and each representing a resource. So this is machine A, B, and C. These are their available time in terms of hour. Okay. So, and if a job is assigned, you can see that it becomes this solid and thicker and darker arrow. And that means, oh, a certain job need to use this 2 hours for machine A. All right. So in this context, the Gantt chart help us to visualize sequence, okay, which job is done in what. Sequence, timing, and waiting, okay, across different resources. So that is the Gantt chart for this chapter, all right. Now let's look at the problem given, okay. We have 5 jobs, job 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And job 1 through 5, each of them requires certain resource in a specific sequence. At each step, takes a certain amount of time. For example, job number 1, you can see the sequence is A, B, C, okay? And furthermore, job 1, step 1 is A for 2 hours, B for 3 hours, C for 4 hours, okay? And now let's just look at another example, job number 2. Only 2 steps required. C first, 6 hours. A second, 4 hours. Okay, so that's how we understand the specific task and requirement for each of the job. Okay, and remember, this sequence cannot be disturbed. It must be C and then A. Okay, and finally, those are their due dates. Okay, for this job number 1, we hope it should be done. You need to deliver to customers in 3 days. If you have 8 hours per day as working shift, then that means you have 24 hours. Okay, but anyway, these are pure working hours. Now, if you look at the routing diagram, you can see how complicated this problem becomes. Okay, so those are the 3 locations, A, B, and C. And for each job, really, it follows a different path through the machine ABC, right? Job number 1 enters here. It's represented by red arrow. So you need to go to A first, B second, and finally C, and then it's done. Okay, and similarly, if it's let's say job number 3. Okay, job number 3 is green arrow. It will enter from B and then green to C and then green to A. BCA. Let's see whether it's BCA. Yes, job number 3 is BCA. Okay, so now you have 5 different jobs, totally different sequences, a mess. All right. Now, before we go ahead, we look at what's our objective. Our objective is to schedule these 5 jobs as efficiently as possible. We want to complete all jobs as early as possible. Okay, the shorter the better. Use our resource efficiently. Okay, those are our resource. And meet due date if possible. Okay, so we try to meet all of them, but I mean, who knows whether that's possible. Okay, and but we try to meet obviously as much as possible. The challenge is deciding the sequence in which jobs should start. Once the sequence is fixed, the rest of the schedule follow naturally. Okay. Now, actually, what's the sequence? That's exactly where the real challenge is. But we will address that in detail later. But suppose we already know the answer of that. At least we want to try the following sequence. Okay. Suppose we are given a sequence that's 1, 4, 5, 2, 3. Those are the based on some priority or whatever. All right. So now let's construct the schedule step by step. If this is our decision, 1, 4, 5, 2, 3, then we have a specific way of assigning them. Okay. Of course, we need to start with job number 1. And just imagine this whole thing is still blank. Okay. A, B, C machine are all available. Nothing is assigned. From now on, I will use solid color and different color to represent different jobs. Okay, I will demonstrate how things are done. Okay, job number 1, let's use red color, but it will stay on the chart instead of disappear. Okay, job number 1, A for 2 hours. Yeah, since this is first job, imagine there's nothing there, right? Yeah, I will start from moment 0 and it takes 2 hours. That's step number 1 of job 1. Step number 2 is B for 3 hours. I would need to wait until A is finished, right? So I can only start from here for 3 hours, B. Okay? And C for 4 hours. That's, yeah, immediate after that, that's period 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So now job 1 is done. And just imagine all the other is still not occupied. Then let's do this job number 4. 4 is the next one. Let me change the color to green. All right. So job number 4, CBA. C for 4 hours. Okay. I want to start from 0. Is there any problem? Actually, no. So far, I only need C starting from hour number 5. Okay, so actually, if you just need 4 hours from the very beginning, no problem. So that is step 1 of job 4. Okay, that's here. And then step 2, B for 3 hours. I hope I can start from here. Okay, but no, that's not possible because at this moment, B is still producing for job 1. Okay, but it will be over 1 hour later. So yeah, I will just take over from there. B for 3 hours. Okay, therefore, for job number 4, which is my second task, there is a 1 hour blank in the middle. That's a waiting time for job number 4. Okay, so that one is done. And lastly, A for 3 hours. So I want to immediately get started after I'm done with C. And at this moment here, we only have red color, so this is available, so 3 hours. Okay, so now we are done with job number 4. Let's just do one more. We don't need to do everything. Okay, let's say job number 5. Job number 5, let's say the pink one. Okay, job number 5 is pink one is A5. Okay, can I start here? I need 5 units of A. No. Okay, and how about after this number 2? Do I have enough space in the middle? Because at that time, that's still blank. Yes, because according to the first 2 jobs, the next time what I need is starting from period number 8. That's for job number 4. So we have 6 hours of blank at this moment. I can definitely start my A5 for job number 5 here. Okay. So this is done. Next one is I need 3 of B. And I hope I can start here, but no, at that time, I'm producing job number 4. I need to wait until it's finished. So after period 8, job number 5, 3 of them. Okay, so now job number 5 is also done. Okay, and there are remaining 2 of them, 2 and 3. You can verify. Okay, so that is how, if we know the sequence, that's how we assign this, scheduling. Okay. And now we continue. You can work on job number 2 and job number 3, the last 2 by yourself. Always check resource availability and respect the required sequence. Whenever a required machine is busy, just wait. Just wait. Okay. Once all 5 are scheduled, actually it will be, now I will remove everything so you can see what is the resource really occupied. Okay, so let me use eraser. Okay. Then the result will be here. Okay, as I said, the last resource is all these arrows, dark, thick arrow. Okay, those are the final assignment. Once all 5 jobs are scheduled, we can evaluate their performance. First one is make span, which is the total time. Remember, this is a batch. This 5 job is considered a batch. You need to complete all of them together. They are a block. Okay, so the total time to complete all jobs, how long does it take? Actually, at the very beginning, you don't know this is 20. Okay, at the very beginning, you can totally give it 21, 22. But after this scheduling, finally, you complete everything at this moment, 20. Okay, so that is the make span of this batch, which is 20 hours. Okay, each machine has 20 hours available, and so the total capacity is 60 hours. And of course, there are different machines, but you use them different. Okay, by counting idle time, what are the idle time? Here, this is one idle time. This is idle time. And on machine B, this is idle time. This is idle time. Okay, same thing for machine C, idle, idle. Okay, you can count on the idle time. All right, and idle time is summarized here. Okay, the total idle hour is 17 hours. Okay, well, then the utilization of this current plan is 1 minus 17 hours of idle divided by how many hours of total capacity? 60 hours. Okay, so therefore its utilization is 71.67. All right, so that's the utilization. All right, we can also observe waiting time. For example, job number one has no waiting time. Why? Because it's the first one. No one is there yet, so they can do anything immediately when necessary. Okay? So, well, who has the longest waiting time? Job number three. Why? Right? It's quite intuitive because it's the last one, lowest priority. So, this is expected, right? Given its position in the sequence. Finally, we compare the completion time. Because I mean, you can see job number one is done at hour number 9, etc., etc. So each of them, the last job, job number 3, is done in week number 20, right? So those are the final completion time. And we also want to see whether it match or satisfy the deadline requirement. Okay? And this actually shows that most of the jobs meet the deadline, right? For example, there is, let's say, job number one, your deadline is 3 days, which means normally 24 hours, but actually you can get it done at hour number 9, okay? And for other things like delivery time, for example, job number 2, job number three, right? Job number 3 is the last one. It's the last one. But is it all right? Actually, job number 3 is due in day 4, which means 4 by 8, 32 hours later. But we can finish it in 20 hours. That's not a problem. Okay. But there is really one that has problem, which is job number 2, which is require in 2 days or roughly 16 hours, but you need 19 hours, a little bit longer than that. But all the other meet the requirement of the due date. All the others are. Okay. So this is this example. This example shows that once a sequence is given, conducting the schedule is kind of straightforward. The real challenge lies in choosing a good sequence, right? Where does this sequence come from? Because the decision determines the efficiency, waiting time, and whether the deadline are met. All this depending on you make a good decision about in what sequence we need to follow, right? So now let's move on to go a little bit about that. We cannot really go into very much detail. All right. So now let's take a closer look at the core challenge in scheduling, which is how the sequence of jobs is determined. As you have already seen in last page, performance is highly dependent on the sequence. Measures such as utilization, make span, lateness, or if there is money related to lateness penalties, all change when the sequence changes. In practice, this means we can evaluate different sequence using this performance metrics and try to find a better, right? You just keep trying different sequence and compare the performance and find a good one or the best one, okay? In practice, this is not so easy, right? And most likely we should not done it. We should not do it manually because computer can do each of the scenario much faster, okay? And it can even try combinations. And waiting time is mainly driven by job interference, as we observed last time. Each job must follow its own sequence, a required sequence. And when it reaches a step, it must wait if the required resource is already occupied, okay? So this waiting depends not only on the sequence, but also on the capacity constraints. In the extreme case, imagine if we have many identical machines for each step, there would be no waiting time at all. But that would require a huge investment and would be very inefficient in terms of resource usage, okay? So the real difficulty is the number of possible sequences. For 5 jobs, as we see 2 pages ago, okay, last page, If you have 5 jobs, we have totally 120 possible sequences. 5 multiplied by 4, multiplied by 3, multiplied by 2, multiplied by 1. Okay, so there is 120 of them. It sounds manageable, but just imagine, what if we increase this batch to 50 jobs? The number of combinations become enormous and impossible to evaluate in a comprehensive and exhaustive manner. This is why finding the optimal schedule is very difficult, why it is still an interesting technical question, okay? Instead, we rely on heuristics. A heuristic is a rule that is simple to apply and easy to compute, but give reasonably good solution. Even though we know it may not be the perfectly optimal solution, but it's pretty good solution, okay? So let's see some very common heuristic. Many of them are very intuitive. One is first come, first serve, right? Which is easy to understand and often perceived as fair. Another one is priority-based scheduling, where the jobs are ranked according to some rule, such as who pay higher price get prioritized, or some special situations, such as in the grocery checkout line, if you have 10 items or less, then yeah, you can go to this specific a few self-checkout machine, okay? Which is some kind of priority, right? Sometimes resources, another approach is preemptive rule, okay? Where higher priority job can interrupt an ongoing one. In the previous, our numerical example, we do not allow preemptive rule, right? You need to wait until the last one is finished. But sometimes, in real life, sometimes you can just interrupt the existing current ongoing one if some job has higher priority. For example, in an emergency room, a critical patient may receive immediate attention, even if it disrupts the current schedule, okay? And also, sometimes we do have a more analytical rule, which is called critical ratio. This is calculated as the remaining time until the due date divided by the remaining processing time, okay? A smaller ratio indicates high urgency. Think about it. What if it's close to 1 or even smaller than 1? The remaining time to the due time is even less than the remaining total processing time. Forget about waiting, okay? Even if we give it highest priority, it still cannot make it if it's less than 1, critical ratio, okay? But on the other hand, even if it's greater than 1, if we compare two jobs, one has a critical ratio of 7, another one has a critical ratio of 20, we are more likely to schedule or prioritize the one with 7, okay? And also, this measure can be used if you allow dynamic scheduling, okay? When a new job comes in, you can see what's its current critical ratio, and the critical ratio keeps changing, right? And then based on something, you reshuffle based on critical ratio. And there are also rules that may seem less intuitive, such as shortest processing time, okay? Where jobs with shorter durations are processed first. In some contexts, especially in computing and telecommunication networks, this approach can improve overall system performance. Okay, it all depends on what you want, what you are looking. Those are just the simple, basic rules. In practice, these basic rules can be combined. You can combine some of them and refine into more advanced methods. Well, optimal scheduling is very complex. These heuristics provide practical ways to achieve good performance. Okay. In the next part, we will look at another important insight. Increasing capacity can help improve both efficiency and delivery performance, although it must be balanced. Okay, let's see. Okay, so we will not go too much in detail. In this numerical example, everything remains the same as before, such as you have 5 jobs, their sequence, etc. Okay, everything. The problem to solve is the same as before. And the only change is that on the resource side, instead of having one machine for each workstation ABC, now we have 2 machines for each. So capacity is effectively doubled. If we still use the same sequence, 1, 4, 5, 2, 3, and then just do this assignment by yourself and follow the same scheduling logic. The process of assigning job is exactly the same, except now whenever a resource is occupied, there may be another available machine. So jobs do not have to wait as often as before. Okay? Looking at the result. So this is the result. So you can verify by yourself. Super easy. Okay? The performance improves significantly. First, the make span is now much shorter. Previously, all jobs were completed by hour 20, but now everything finished by hour 11. Okay, so that is a major improvement in speed. If we look at the waiting time, the improvement is also clear. Job 1, 2, 4, 5 all have 0 waiting time. Okay, they can start and move through their required steps without any delay because there is enough capacity. Only job 3, which still has the lowest priority. It's the last job to be assigned, right? Only job number 3 experienced some delay. And even this delay, 5, is much shorter than before. Okay? However, this improvement comes with a cost. With 2 machines at each workstation and a make span of 11 hours, the total available capacity is 66 hours. Out of that, 23 hours are idle. This means more than 1/3 of the total capacity is unused. Compared to the previous case, not only is the proportion of idle time higher, but even the total idle time has increased from 17 hours to 23 hours. Okay, so this example highlights the trade-off. By increasing capacity, we can reduce waiting time, and achieve much faster completion. But we also lower utilization and create more idle resources. In practice, scheduling decisions often involve balancing these 2 outcomes, efficiency versus responsiveness. Okay. Now let's briefly introduce a concept called the theory of constraints. This is not a completely new theory or something that contradicts what we have learned so far. All the existing concepts still apply. Instead, this is more about a practical way of thinking that many operators and supply chain managers find useful. The idea comes from a very popular book called The Goal, written by Eli Goldratt. It's actually a fictional story that explains production and scheduling principles in a very intuitive, fictional way. Okay, the book follows 2 parallel storylines, one about a plant manager trying to improve operations, and another about a service business run by his wife. It's a training company. Okay, although the contexts are different, both stories lead to the same underlying principles. The key takeaway is a shift in focus. First, being busy does not necessarily create value. Production only has value when the product is completed and sold. Any work in process inventory, no matter how much effort is invested, does not generate value until it moves through the entire system and reaches the customer. Okay, so that's something we need to clarify. And also that's necessary. Remember, this book was written in 1983. Lean mindset, Six Sigma, Lean, JIT, Kanban, just enter United States. Okay. Second, the most important concept is the so-called constraint, theory of constraint, right? So especially the bottleneck. Constraint is bottleneck, okay? A constraint is anything that limits the overall output of the system. And the bottleneck is a resource with the lowest capacity, okay? This bottleneck determines the capacity of the entire system. No matter how well other parts perform, the system cannot produce more than what the bottleneck allows. That is a bottleneck. We just want to clarify it again. Okay. And so really, really the key takeaways that is the bottleneck determines the capacity of the system, as we already know. There is always at least one constraint in the system. Okay. Even if everything appear balanced, when you talk to a lot of production professionals, they say, "Oh, our system, all processes are balanced." Okay, so there is no bottleneck. That's wrong answer. Okay, uh, sometimes people cannot think it over, right? So they cannot think it clear. So they say, "Yeah, it's balanced, no bottleneck." But in that case, if you ask them that if we want to increase output significantly, let's say by 50% or something, which resource must be expanded first? Okay, when they say, I cannot think about any bottleneck, you can change the way you ask. If you want to expand, which one you must increase first? Actually, that one is the bottleneck. Okay, so that resource is the bottleneck. The implication is very important. Okay, 1 hour lost at the bottleneck is lost for the entire system and cannot be recovered because opportunity and time is gone, is gone. On the other hand, improving efficiency at non-bottleneck resources does not increase overall output or profit. It may keep people busy or seeing, some improvement as they believe it, but it does not help the system producing more. Okay, therefore it does not generate more profit. So the main takeaway from the theory of constraint is that managers should focus their effort on identifying and improving the bottleneck. Okay, that is where improvement will have the greatest impact on capacity and throughput. So it is a very practical perspective, and the book itself is quite readable and worth exploring if you are interested in this kind of detail. Okay, so that's about this chapter.